recording. Oh, there we go.
Hey, everybody. How you doing tonight?
The invisible people are probably doing okay.
That could be.
Yup.
Well, tonight we are here with actually a really good guy. We've met him through the Paracons, and he's just a lot of fun, and he has a lot
He's
to talk
terrible.
about. Yeah.
She said a really good guy, and I'm like, where?
Yeah. He's also a shithead. No.
Shut up.
Yeah, shut up. It's always shut up.
I feel like we're going to hear that a lot today.
Yep.
So tell us, Ray. Tell us about you. Tell us where you came from and what you do and the whole 9 yards.
I came from my mom, and
Good start.
my dad had something to do with it. And I was born back in the 70s, around like 1977. Look at that puppy. Sorry, I got sidetracked. Got the dog out, and I'm like, what?
Sorry, it's Lizzie.
I was born back in 1977 to a very, my dad was actually a pastor himself for a little bit.
Awesome.
So I grew up in a very strict Christian family to start. Much later on, we stopped going to church altogether. But that kind of plays into the whole paranormal thing and how that all started for me. So much later, I was like 10 years old. My little brother was 5. And we moved. First time my parents had ever purchased their own house. And of course, the one we move into is haunted, right? So
Right.
It's like a month or two after we moved in, at least my little brother and I started noticing some weird things happening. It just, certain rooms felt odd at certain times, and it just weird stuff. And as the years progressed, like we'd just be sitting there, and we'd have our stack of movies, VHS tapes on top of the VCR, and one in the middle would just fly out, and like the rest of them would just go all over the place. Like, okay, our cat's sitting right next to us, so it's not the cat. So we're like, oh, it's just weird stuff. Really benign stuff, though. Like stuff that like kind of like, whoa, scared you for a second. But then you just kind of, after a while, we got kind of used to it.
Yeah.
It started to progress a little more than that, though, so to the point where we were seeing like shadows. My parents always kept the bathroom light on at night, like a night light, so just people could see where they were going. And my brother's room was right across from the bathroom, and he would freak out because in the middle of the night he'd wake up and see a shadow walking down the hallway. So he'd run into my mom and dad's. They were sleeping. He'd run into my room, and I was asleep. What even scarier, though, is my little brother would camp out in my room, like without telling me, and he'd like get his little sleeping bag, and he'd be half under my bed. So like when I got up in the morning, or if I had to get up and use the bathroom, I'd get up and look down, and there's this body on my floor. Like, holy shit.
Oh.
Sometimes that was scarier than the actual ghost. But much later on, I'd actually moved out. I was 18 at this point, and I moved back in because I went to college, didn't work out. I came home. At that point, my brother had taken my room, so I got his old little shitty room. Excuse my language.
No, you're fine.
All right.
You're good.
So
say what you want.
Yep, I got my room, and my mom and dad still had that same old light in the hallway, and I started seeing shadows. I'm like, what the hell's going on? But we couldn't talk to them because the church that we went to at the time, if you talked about that stuff, you were either insane or they would drag you up in front of the church and like try to perform an exorcism. I grew up with this stuff.
Yeah.
My dad wasn't a pastor at this point, but we were pretty well indoctrinated into this church that we were going to. And so I had nobody to turn to. I couldn't talk. My brother and I talked to each other about it. We're 5 years apart. So he was like 13, and he was starting to get into techno music. And like the internet was a thing. It was just starting up. Like AOL was a big thing. You can go on the web and find files of his techno music. And he's the first one who, I told him about EVPs, but I had never heard one myself. And he found a website with a bunch of EVPs that people were downloading that they caught during investigations. And he started weaving it into his techno music, and it was creepy as hell. So that's how he dealt with it. I started reading books. I started reading books by like Hans Holzer, Lord Auerbach, some of the grandfathers of modern day ghost hunting or whatever you want to call it. And that helped me. So like early adulthood, I'm still like the little kid with the comic books under his sheets with the flashlight reading, but I'm like reading these big thick Hans Holzer books about the afterlife, trying to figure out what the hell was going on. And instead of getting more scared or anything like that, I actually got way more interested in the afterlife and what happens and all the different theories. And my interest in it continued. It would come and go just like any other hobby. Then much later, I was in my mid-20s. I met my wife. We started living together, and we're sitting there and we're watching the show. She's like, "Oh, did you ever see this show? You talk about ghosts and stuff all the time." I'd never watched it. Like, I've watched the older ghost shows, but she turned on Ghost Hunters, with Jay and Grant. Like, it was like the second or third season, I think. I'm like, holy crap, you can actually go and do this. Like, I didn't know you could pay and like go to a ghost hunt, like a public ghost hunt. Like, I know people did it, but I thought you had to be invited, or if it was like people were looking for experts in the field to go investigate their house and help them, which I wanted to do, but I didn't really know enough about it yet. So I'm like, okay, so I found out I had a bunch of friends at work that watched it, and we started like every few months we started kind of like a ghost hunting club. So we'd paid, like, we went to like OSR, we went to Moundsville, we went to some pretty cool places for their public ghost hunts, and then we started doing privates. And then some people left, and just kind of I ended up joining a team, and some of those people came with me, which was really cool. But that team, I learned a lot about how to debunk things, but I was having experiences that I couldn't debunk, and he wouldn't let me like live it down. He was kind of he started turning into a bit of a control freak.
Oh.
And it was like kind of like when the millimeters and stuff were coming out, and like different equipments were coming out. Like the spirit boxes were just kind of, progressing from what Frank's box was originally to like the SB7s and stuff like that. And if it wasn't approved scientifically by him, we weren't allowed to use it on investigations. So at that point, we're like, you know what? It's time to part ways, because I think I'm on a different journey now. I'm more of a believer than I am a skeptic, but I can be a skeptic when I need to be, especially if we do residentials. You have you have to go in with this, the more of the skeptical balance to your what do you got. But so we found throughout that group, we would do bigger ghost hunts. Where you always need more people. Like if you only have 5 people in your group, but you want to do a bigger place on a private, you always invite another group. You have other friends. You start building the circle. So the group Dark Alley, which was at the time based out of Columbus, they were already kind of like working with us on several different ghost hunts that we were going on. And the guy who ran it at the time, he was doing like the web page for Trans Allegheny. He did Moundsville, so he had access to it, and we got in for super cheap, so it was pretty cool. Now he doesn't, so we still pay full price, but still it's worth every dime. So we started working with him, and then we left the group I was talking about, and we started working with Dark Alley. Like that's what we did. And he ended up letting us do our own Northeast Ohio group. So we started our own chapter, and I started bringing in friends from the old group or from like work that were interested. And it went through its different periods. People came and they left, or they wanted to join and they never showed up for anything. You know how it is. Yep. So now we got like a core 4, we call them the family, and we're like best friends. And we stopped doing residentials as much because it's too much of a headache, and none of us really have the time to like dive in like we know we need to. Like you have to be like ready to go and like help these people and like follow through to the end. And there's really no end. You got to always be kind of like part of their lives until if you do basically it the right way.
Call.
Yeah, basically on call, because there's too many groups out there that they go to residential and it's like a one and done. They got their content for whatever they're doing, and then they just you have ghosts and they leave. Or a lot of them drop the D word. You got demons, and then they leave, and they don't.
Oh my God!
So,
don't get me started about
that. So, I was doing it long enough at that point where I had friends that I trusted that were like demonologists, which we never really needed, because I don't think I've never seen a demonic case ever. I had a good group of like psychics, mediums that I was working with, people that could come in and cleanse and help, sage houses and get rid of the energy, doing like the energy work stuff. And I kind of started learning it myself too, so I can probably do it, but I'd still rather have somebody with me that has a little bit more knowledge.
Oh,
but
absolutely.
I'm learning. I have somebody that is actually part of our group. Her name's Tina. She's like our team medium, but she's also like my mentor in a way. She's like helping me develop my abilities, which I believe all of us actually have. We just have to develop them.
Yes.
So it's just been a journey. So like now, if I go on a ghost hunt, I rarely take any equipment with me at all. I just like to enjoy and feel the place out and like actually pay attention to what's going on instead of
using your senses is a lot.
Yeah. Instead of like sitting there looking at the millimeter or whatever piece of equipment is and like talking to it instead of trying to communicate with the spirit.
Yeah.
Right.
I think sorry. I was just going to say, I feel like that's the biggest problem with the new ghost hunting is everybody's just paying attention to the electronics. They're not even really paying attention to the environment.
No, they're not.
No, yeah, I completely agree. I do use spirit boxes and I have a crystal pod. I do use stuff, but I don't take the 5 or 6 Pelican cases with me everywhere I go. We stopped using DVRs. We don't really, if we do anything, we'll go live just for fun for, about a half an hour, just to kind of say, hey, here's our group. We're doing a ghost hunt. But we're not super popular. We're not like a big YouTube group. We just, we do it because we enjoy doing it. We're trying to figure stuff out. But
that's us.
I feel like that's the best way to do it.
Yeah, we're not out to make a mark in the world. We're just out to help somebody,
Right. And then through all that, like I said, we don't do residentials, but eventually you're in the paranormal long enough, you start meeting people that are in different like genres of or like so I started to kind of get into the UFO stuff, the UFOlogy, and now I'm like all in on that. And then I started kind of getting into the cryptozoology, which I was always kind of into that because I grew up in the country, so like being in the outdoors and like thinking I see things all the time, your mind wanders. And I've always believed that there's a possibility that Bigfoot exists.
Oh gosh,
so I started to kind of so I started getting into that, and now I feel like more full of things to do and experience. And you guys have followed my weight loss journey, and I can actually go hiking now, and I can do things that I couldn't do 15
well, you look fabulous.
Thank you do.
I appreciate it, but I'm just I'm saying that just because I can actually do things now that I wouldn't be able to do the last couple of years. So I can actually get out and like do like active like hiking and field work if I if the spirit moves me to. And I've until recently I didn't really have, I've always been interested and I believe in aliens. I know we're not the only ones out there. But then I started like looking at people's theories and started looking at people's just social media is great because then you have access to a lot of different stories and you can kind of, but you get enough experience where you can start weeding out the bullshit from what might be real.
Yep.
But I believe there's a lot of legit people out there posting like legit evidence, talking about their stories. I listen to all kinds of podcasts. You guys know I have a podcast myself.
Yep.
That I got involved with, I think 7 or 8 years ago. So it's been going on. And after a while, I mean, just talking about ghost hunting all the time, it gets boring on the podcast end.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So we started talking more about, cryptozoology and stuff. I feel like I'm jumping all around, so I apologize.
You're fine.
No, you're fitting right in. We do that all the time.
Right. But yeah, I mean, I'm into everything. I have theories, but nothing. One thing at the end of the day, what I'll say to everybody is I'll never say I'm an expert in anything.
Right.
I'm just an enthusiast, and I'm on a journey into weird stuff. I like weird stuff. Just like it.
Weird is good, though. It keeps life fun.
Yeah. Yes, it does. I love being weird.
I don't have time for normal.
And I got to tell you, Ray, Bigfoot Chelsea never believed in Bigfoot.
Oh yeah.
And I kept telling her, hey, I've got one in my woods up north. She didn't believe me till she had to live there.
Always got.
Oh yeah.
In, don't you?
Yep, you can share the story with him now.
Yeah, I want to know.
Right. Picture it. Okay, it was just after Michigan Paracon 2021. I was living at my parents' trailer here up north, which is in the middle of the woods, so it's nothing.
We call it the hippie shack.
Yeah. Nice.
And at the time, I had my fourth husky, Mr. Bo. He was just a little thing. Okay, so it was early morning, kind of like that gray part of dawn. I go outside, and the three older ones are running around in the yard. I've got Bobo in my arms, and I'm just standing on the deck, which is overlooking the back of the woods. And all of a sudden, the three dogs in the yard look out to the woods, and Bubbles looking at the woods. So I'm looking at the woods, and there's like this figure that just like do 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 do. And it had to have been 7 feet tall. It was just a black mass, and it was upright like a person. And then it was gone, and I followed it with my eyes, and I watched it disappear. And the very first thing that popped out of my mouth was, "You got to be fucking kidding me." I was almost mad that I'm
a believer.
Right.
Got it.
2021, Michigan Paracon did a lot of crypto stuff.
Yeah.
And the whole weekend, I'm like, I'm open to it, but I'm not a believer. I got to see it for it to happen.
Yeah.
And then that happened. I'm like, damn it. Now I have to believe in it because
hey, at least you got to see it.
Yeah, it was cool.
There's a lot of things that I would be, you know what, I'd be happy and I'd retire and, just read from then on. But seeing Bigfoot is one of them. The only brush-in I've had with anything that could have possibly have been Bigfoot was my buddies own a cabin out in Kane, Pennsylvania, which is like right in the middle of the Allegheny National Forest. And all over that place, there's just stories and stories and stories of Bigfoot. I mean, and like you go into town there, like every store has like the Bigfoot statue in the front of their, in front of their store. And it's part of the culture out there. But we're out there and I'm like, wouldn't it be funny if we saw Bigfoot? And we were just talking about it. And my buddies were all drunk. We're all going, whoop, whoop, just stumbling around. Well, later that night, we were inside, we were sobering up, eating something, and then we just heard something hit the roof. And the roof is like that, it's metal roofing.
Yeah.
So it's really loud. And I'm like, that's weird, because it's not we're like around trees, but there's no trees directly hanging over the house on purpose. Sure. I mean, they cleaned the area out that way. And then it was like a hail. We thought like it was a hailstorm or something going on. We went outside, it stopped. I'm like, okay. And there's all these rocks laying around. Like just somebody was throwing rocks at the roof. So like, holy shit. So we went back to bed we went to bed and woke up to the same noise going crazy at it's like 4:00 in the morning. We're like, what the hell? My buddy recorded it. It just do. Yep. So something was out there throwing rocks at the house. Yeah. And that's a story you hear from a lot of people. I mean, I've read so many stories about just guys, in a hunting cabin doing their thing and just some shit gets thrown at their, they're thinking, oh, it's squirrels or something. But no, these are like big rocks. They go out and there's these stones everywhere.
Yeah, and they hurt.
Crazy. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I can imagine getting hit one, especially if it's been thrown by a Sasquatch. I'm like, Jesus.
It's funny you said it wasn't squirrels, because I'm sitting here picturing like squirrels with little army helmets on chucking rocks at you guys.
Yeah, I remember this movie called Open Season that.
Oh my God, I love that movie.
Yeah, my kids used to watch with the bear and the deer. And there's these scenes with these squirrels, and it's like one of the bigger Scottish actors, and they're all like that. They're without the army hats, but they're all like ready to like just throw nuts at anybody that drops by, and they're like an army. that just help people and they just attack these kids like all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was weird. But that's why I've never seen anything. But again, like I said, at that point in time, I wasn't really able to like really hike. I just hung out at the cabin. So what if it didn't come to me, I wasn't seeing it. And I know you have to go find it because it's not just walking around hanging out.
Yeah, it's not going to come find you.
Right. And apparently they can do all kinds of things to hide. I mean, there's all types of theories. Some people think they can cloak, or they're so great at camouflaging themselves you can't see them. Some people think they're interdimensional beings.
Some
people think they're
aliens.
Yeah, some people think they're aliens. Some people think they're spiritual beings, which I had my own long theory about that, which maybe that'd be a different show. But just I think we created it because I'll get into it a little bit. I'll try to give you the abridged version if you're okay with that.
We're fine.
So like people talk about interdimensional beings, which I'm totally down with UFOs. I think that could be a theory. Actually, the theory that's hardest for me to believe is that it's just a regular flesh and blood creature that's just walking around and living in the woods.
Same.
I can't believe that either.
Yeah. There's something more, for lack of a better word, magical about Bigfoot.
Yeah.
And the thing that tends to make me think it's more of a spiritual thing and that it's real is the fact that it doesn't matter where you go in the world, there's some form of this same creature that's indoctrinated so deeply into people's legends and history. I mean, there's cave drawings of these creatures, and there's tribes, indigenous people that have been here way longer than we have, and they all believe the same story. It's a story that's been handed down for generation after generation.
Well, and there's even people that believe some of the stories in the Bible were actually about Bigfoot.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. But, there's other cryptids like Chupacabra. You didn't hear about Chupacabra until they published a story about it in 1995, which I graduated high school in 1995. So that's a lot harder for me to believe than Bigfoot. But anyway, I find it very hard to believe that throughout evolution, like, think about science class when you were in, like, 5th grade. And you start talking about human evolution. Like, you're a fish, and then the next phase is you're, like, a chimpanzee, and then you're kind of like a chimpanzee, but you're erect. Nothing ever shows that in between time or after.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time we're what we are going to be, we've adapted. But what's to say that one step before us or 2 steps before us isn't also adapted?
Right.
So these ancient people are still seeing this thing because it still exists physically.
Right.
But as our minds evolve, we're like, okay, that's a wild man. He's scary. He's like a creature. Okay, so then you think about as time goes on, that thing will probably eventually become extinct just through natural selection. Mm-hmm. But then there's things like Gigantopithecus that we know it was a real beast, which is like kind of a bipedal form of an orangutan that stood about 6 to 7 feet
tall.
And people see that, and we're talking about not so ancient people seeing it, but the story continues, and there's interactions, and those stories continue, such to the point that we are creating. I think we could actually, especially like even in ghost hunting, there's a theory of creating a tulpa or an egregore, which is basically a thought form.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we know we're not like physically manifesting these creatures? We're spiritually manifesting them with such a deep indoctrinated belief and thought process and intense curiosity. How are we not like making these actually exist? Which would make sense, because then they're kind of like a flesh and blood creature, but they also have supernatural abilities because they are also a spiritual being. Does that make sense? I'm like kind of rambling, but
no, it does make sense. It's actually a really good theory to think about.
I felt something similar when I think about Bigfoot, because if it was an actual physical being, it would leave behind physical evidence.
Yeah.
Right.
The fact that we have so much lack thereof that I just don't find it plausible. Right. But just for example, my experience, I come from a weekend where it was nothing but talking about Bigfoot, and then all of a sudden I see him. So it's like, for him to be
exactly.
it was almost like he was conjured. So to me, that makes the most sense.
Yeah, and our consciousness is a crazy tool. It's a crazy thing. Like this whole thing with, I'm going to try to stick with Bigfoot, but I haven't seen Bigfoot, but my conscience is open to it. That's where the theory comes from. I'm like, how do we know this beast that's been a legend for longer than we've been around is a spiritual but living being at the same time? But it also kind of goes, now we're getting connected into the UFO thing. I never had a UFO experience, or at least I didn't think I have. So, but until recently, back in the early fall, I had just learned about collective consciousness experiments, or the CE5, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, where you're trying to make conscious mental connections with extraterrestrial beings. And I mean, our friends Andrea Perrin talks about it all the time. Deb DeRuse and RJ, you know, you guys are in the same circle. You know who I'm talking about.
Oh yeah.
Gosh, yes, we love them all.
I've learned a lot from them. I've learned a lot by watching documentaries. There's a lot of good stuff from Stephen Greer, although I think a lot of what he says is bullshit. Like all this stuff about disclosure and all these other things. I mean, I believe there's a lot of going on in the government that we don't believe in, or we that is actually going on that we don't know about.
100%.
I think some of that stuff needs to stay underground so we don't know about it, because I don't think most people can handle the truth.
No,
but,
I believe that too.
Yeah,
massive panic.
But when I start, again, like you went to the Michigan Paracon and it was cryptid base.
Yep.
So I had like about 2 months where I'm like binging everything UFO. I just, I go, that's what I like. I have hobbies, but I always have one where I'm like, I'm all in, and that's all I think about. That's all I do. So we get home from something and I'm outside with the dogs and I'm staring at the sky, and it's pretty clear there's one big cloud kind of going through the middle of it. So I know like collective consciousness experiments, you kind of are supposed to have like a group, so it's more powerful. But I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to mess around. I'm going to try a solo. I'm just going to see what happens. Because I feel like I can speak to spirit when I concentrate hard enough.
Yeah.
So I'm like, how is that any different, really? I mean, seriously, if your ability is honed enough, you should be able to get some kind of message out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm just like, I'm staring intently at the sky. My dogs are barking. I don't even hear them, honestly. At this point, I'm just like so fixated on the sky. And I'm like, please show yourselves. I'm asking. I believe in you. I want to talk to you. I want to learn about you. Honestly, if you can get me off this rock for a little bit, it'd be cool too. Just stuff like that. Just like serious, like paying attention. And I see some weird stuff in the sky, some lights, but the skeptical side of me is always like, it's always like hit me in the back of the head, like, oh, that's just an airplane, or you don't know what that is. I don't have my Skyview app telling me what's flying over me at that point in time. So I'm like, all right, I just look down at the dogs and then I look back up and that cloud is still there, but all of a sudden there's this like hole in the cloud. It's like something poked like their finger through it or something. So I'm like, that's weird. I don't think airplanes can do that. I don't think they fly through a cloud and they just leave a big hole. I don't think that's happened. And I've asked pilots that have flown through clouds after the fact, and they're like, no. I mean, there's dissipation, but if it does anything, it'll flow around and then kind of like reform itself on the backside of you. He's like, we don't just poke holes through clouds. You can't do that. So I'm like, okay, that's cool. But anyways, before all that, I'm like, okay, there's a hole in the sky. And then I'm like, it looks kind of weird. So I started zooming in. And I'm like, what the hell? It's like I zoomed in more. I didn't edit it besides zooming in on it. And you could see this like symmetrical triangular shape, like a shadow or a lack of light, I guess is the best way to say it. Like almost it's like draining the energy around it, but it's enough so you can actually make out the figure. But it's like a triangle that kind of goes down, up, like down with like a bit of a tail, up, down, and then goes back up. I'm like, okay, that is really crazy. And I actually got a picture of it. I should have sent it to you, but yeah, I looked at it and then I'm still sitting outside and I texted to Andrea. I'm like, what do you think about this? She's like, oh, I see so many things going on. She's like, there's definitely something in that cloud. But then she's like pointing out other stuff to me that I don't really understand what she's seeing because I'm fixated on the one thing that I can see.
Right.
And then I showed Deb, she's like, oh yeah, she's like, and then she points out the fact, she's like, what do you believe? What do you feel?
Yeah.
I'm like, my gut dropped when I saw it. And I feel like I was putting enough out there. And I think something was trying to show itself back to me to say, hey, we're here.
Yeah.
Welcome to the family. You know what I mean? Right. And then she sent me to Mama Mary Bassett. We love her. Mm-hmm. So we've scheduled it like 3 times, but I'm supposed to do a regression with her to kind of see if there's anything else in my past that I'm not remembering.
That would be cool.
Because I told her one of the things I experienced. Okay, that's nothing. One thing I experienced in the house that I grew up was I woke up one night and I could not move. I felt like there was something like holding me down, kind of. But it's like a pretty intense pain, like right in the center of my head. And over me, I could see 2 shadow figures just like kind of observing me, like, but over me. And I'm like, ew. And I would have thought that was like sleep paralysis. Like, I know all the sleeping disorders after doing this doesn't really describe that. And I thought it was the ghosts of the 2 kids that we believed were haunting the house because the previous owners, their kids passed away in a car accident. So we always thought what was ever going on there was related to them. And there was a lot of other stuff that kind of connected all those dots, but I never felt 100% on them being like shadow ghost figures. You know what I mean? It's just like nothing. Yeah. I kind of connected the dots with that just because that's what made sense at the time. But I never felt that was really what I saw. So Mary's like, I really think that there's more of a connection there that may have been an experience and not really of the extraterrestrial type. Not what you thought when you were younger is a ghost. So people sometimes get those confused because they present themselves as such. So I don't know. We'll see. And we're both so busy with our family schedules that it's like we nail down a time, and then her son is like big into basketball and has tournaments all the time. So she's like, oh, and I know because my daughter was in softball, so they give you like a time change, like the day of, like you're up getting ready, like, oh yeah, we started at 8 and it's like 7 o'clock in the morning. So I know how that is. And then, with my work schedule, it's crazy. So, but yeah, it's just like all these things are kind of melding together, and I don't know which direction I'm going anymore, but I love it.
Perfect.
Go
ahead, honey.
I lost my track of thought, so it must not have been important.
When did you start your podcast?
It was funny. The first time, technically, I've been on the podcast for 7 years, but it wasn't my podcast to begin with.
Okay.
A friend of mine started the podcast, the Cryptic Paranormal Show, which is we kept the title. They actually asked me on their show as a guest, and we just had a blast. We clicked. It was so much fun. We just played off each other so easily. It just felt great. But, I thought I was just a guest. So we're packing up, getting ready to leave. I'm like, guys, thank you so much. I had a blast. And they're like, well, we kind of talked when you went to the restroom 5 minutes ago. We would love for you to be on the show all the time, like be a co-host. I'm like, yes, I'm in. So I had tried doing podcasts and live streams before, but it was always just by myself. And I kind of always do better when I'm talking to other people.
Yeah.
With other people. Because sometimes my ADHD, it makes me kind of like, it takes too long for me to focus back on what I wanted to ask like 5 minutes ago.
Right.
So that was great. And we had fun. And we kind of changed the format because when I first started with them, we were asking questions like that we had pre-wrote. And that's okay. But, I like to let the conversations kind of flow naturally to where they're going to end up. So we started doing that. We had fun. But then, stuff happens. We're not getting paid. We're actually paying to use this space because it was like an internet radio station that we were doing the show out of originally. And Lauren, who was the co-host, who's like kind of our show psychic, had to leave because her daughter was growing up and she was getting super busy. Steve had to leave for health reasons. So when he left, he's like, dude, show is yours. You want to keep it running? Go for it. He's like, keep the same name. He said, we love you, dude. You're my brother. Just keep it going. If you want it, it's yours. So I'm like, oh, I'm honored. So obviously, yeah, I'm going to keep the same name. And at that point, Michael Bradley, who's a member of my team, who we jokingly call Heisenberg, he was already hanging out in the studio every Thursday, just kind of in the back and like cracking jokes every once in a while. So I'm like, dude, how about you and me? How about you and me just roll with this? It's like, yeah, sure. I'm already here. I'm already hanging out. Might as well. So he started, and then our friend Denise, or D Nice as we call her on the show, unless you pissed her off, then she's D Unit. We invited her because at the time, like that's when like COVID hit, and she wasn't really working and just being an at-home mom, so she was looking for something to take up her time. And she's also a volunteer at Madison Seminary, one of my favorite haunted locations that we go to all the time. So we all had like that in common. We all got along together really well. So it just felt natural, and we've been going for 7 years since. And
wow.
I don't think things have changed a little bit here and there. We've changed formats. We've played with different ideas, but we've had some pretty great guests for the most part. Though it's just the three of us doing what we're doing. It's just shooting the proverbial shit, and just wherever it goes, it goes. And we enjoy it. Yeah, and we do a live stream. Like predominantly, our show is a live stream show, so it's like on Facebook and YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And we interact with the chat room a lot. So like a lot of our topics come from questions or comments from the chat room. So it's really cool. But like I said, we've had some pretty cool guests. We've had Nick Roth. We've had Andrew has been on the show twice. We've had some really awesome people. Nice. A lot of our own friends and teams that were our personal friends of ours.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to start focusing on actual like paranormal stories that we find, and then just kind of chatting about that. So there's, just trying to keep it new and fresh. But yeah, the Cryptic Paranormal Show, we're on every Thursday night from 8 to 9 p.m. That's Eastern Standard Time.
Okay.
And you can find us live streaming on the RU Media Facebook page, which is like the media group that we're a part of. But we also have our own. We also have the Cryptic Paranormal Show Facebook page, and that's on there. It's also on the RU Media Network YouTube channel. So it's live on all three of those. And then I probably should edit it, but I don't because I automatically download all the raw footage or all the raw audio, and I put it in the Spreaker, which is a podcast website, and it goes out to Apple Podcasts. It goes to all the podcast things. So we just started that up again recently. We're downloading our audio, and it seems to be doing pretty good. We're getting quite a few downloads, so
awesome.
People seem to be enjoying it. Yep.
That's even better.
It's amazing how many people actually watch podcasts, and you don't see them on there. But then you find out, they walk up to you and you're like, hey, we were listening to you the other night. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, the guy who runs our media group, the director, he was at first downloading all the shows and all the stuff down to Spreaker, but he funds everything himself. And I'm like, dude, we're friends. We're not trying to drain you. If it's free to do it this way, let's do it this way.
Yep.
So the thing is with Spreaker, you can download so many shows in so many hours, but then past that, you have to start paying for it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I don't care. We'll take off a couple episodes and just keep downloading the new ones. I mean,
there you go.
It's like we were talking before. We just like having fun and talking to people. It's not about likes. I mean, I like having the chat room filled with like 20, 30 people, but normally it's like 5 to 10 and we're still having a great time. So who cares?
Well, if you can't have fun with it, why do you do it?
Right.
Yep. And we go to Paracons every once in a while. You guys have seen me up in Michigan a couple times. We got one coming up. We're going to be out in Mansfield Prison, the big Parapsychon they have every year.
We'll be there.
Awesome. Yeah, this will be I think it's our 4th year going. So
I think that's cool. The last time we seen you was there, wasn't it?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah, because we didn't make it to Podographs this year. We got I will be, at least I will be from the show. I'm trying to get Denise and Michael to come, but Deb asked me to come up to the Michigan UFO Contact. So I'm gonna be there for sure.
Nice.
Unfortunately, we won't be this year because she had to change weekends.
Oh, okay. I gotcha. Yeah, normally it's on the same weekend as MadCon, which is at Madison, and it's a local one that we do every year, and it's run by the media group that we're part of. So we do that, and it's a great fundraiser. If you're keep an eye on that, because they've raised a lot of money for local charities. It's crazy how much they've raised. But MadCon, MAD/CON, yeah. But it's at Madison Seminary. It's like kind of an outdoor vending fair. They have some special guests. Like last year, they had the crew from Project Fear. Those guys are a blast. Love them.
I love doing fundraising events.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yep. And so we actually had a big thing where Heisenberg hates. It's kind of a joke that Heisenberg hates cold cut sandwiches or cold cuts in general. So we were like, okay. We asked him first, obviously, for his permission, but we're like, okay, if we can raise $500 outside of what we're raising for this fundraiser, at least, Heisenberg will stand up in front of everybody and eat a bologna sandwich. We raised $800 extra bucks for him to eat a bologna sandwich in front of everybody. It was amazing.
That's fantastic. And then
I think the only other definite thing the show is going to be at, there's a festival that's local to us called the Viking Village Festival, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's like a Ren fair, but it's all about Viking history and culture, which is really cool. And it's local to Ohio. I go to it with just me and my family, because for those that don't know me very well, I'm an astrotrue pagan, so I'm very indoctrinated into Viking lore, although I don't believe my family were Vikings. Viking was a very specific type of people, but they just kind of bind it all into one. So we go to that and we celebrate that. But the same people that run that show are starting a Cryptid Con, which is local.
Nice.
Really?
And I reached out to them. I'm like, I do a paranormal show, and we're real local, and we're somewhat popular, at least in Northeast Ohio. So, and I'm sure we're probably going to have friends that are already vending there. So they want us to do like the show or some kind of Q&A and with everybody as part of the convention. So
that's wonderful.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
So you got good things happening.
Yeah, and besides that, I got
Potographs next year is going to be a 2-day event.
I saw that. That's cool. I got to start saving my money, and hopefully we need to sell some shirts at these other conventions. That's all we do. We don't save any of the money for ourselves. We just put it into the pot for either more merch so that we can sell more merch and get money for more cons. You know what I mean? So
that's what we do.
Conventions are amazing, and they're fun, and they have a great purpose. And but it's expensive. It's especially now, it's so expensive to travel. It's hard for us to do anything that we have to like stay at. And especially when you're talking about a 2-day event, but I know it's at the Lakeside Convention Center up in Houghton Lake again, which is cool. I love that. I love that place. Yeah,
it's pretty.
It was way better than the Ann Arbor, which I still had fun at, but
that was terrible.
And it's nothing about the convention; it's the actual place that it was at.
Yeah, it was the
oh my God
location. It was just not.
Yeah, and I think that's why Deb's like, you know what? Let's go back to Houghton. We got to have it back at Houghton Lake. Which made everybody.
Like, let's go back to Houghton Lake, please.
Yes, everybody was super ecstatic about it. I was really upset that I couldn't be there this year. Hopefully next year, but next year's next year. I got to get through this year first.
Right.
This year first. Yes.
Yep.
Yes. So tell us about some of your adventures at Madison.
Madison is a great place, and it's in Madison, Ohio. It's been several things, and it's like every time I go there, which is usually at least once a month, because they do self-guided flashlight tours, like especially now that the weather's starting to turn and the building is a little bit more accessible, because it's not like the climate of it's not like throwing people away, because it gets super cold, and there's like 1 week in like mid-June where it's like perfect in the building. Because they have heating, but it's just in the lobby. So the rest of the building right now is freezing cold.
Oh no.
And it's going to stay that way until, like I said, mid-June. And then after mid-June, it's going to be like 20 degrees hotter than it is outside. So, but I started going there with my original group, and I got hooked, and we started volunteering there with the old owner, and fell in love with the place. And I don't know if you guys go to a place that you just kind of get connected to, and if you don't go anywhere else in the year, you're going to go there at least once.
Yep.
And this is kind of I think about the place anytime I'm anywhere close. I'm like, man, I wish I could go to Madison. I was there last Saturday helping out with the tours. And it's cool because the self-guided tours, they actually rent equipment. So it ends up, by the end of the night, it's a public ghost hunt. There's so much history there. I mean, originally it was a school, a seminary school, obviously. The building burnt down. They rebuilt it. Then it was a women's home for displaced women they either lost their husbands or their husbands were lost in the Civil War. Okay. They would lose their homes, so they would bring them there, and they would have a place to live. And it was like a work home. They helped the home function. It was like a commune for displaced mothers and wives and children. And then, it's been so many things. It was a home for elderly women. But while it was a home for elderly women, it was also a place for the women's state prison in Marion would send some of their inmates there to learn skills. Oh. And they would help be nurses and stuff like that. It would help them kind of rehab. So just a mixed bag. It's just so much, because you never know who you're talking to or what you're going to get. True. There's a woman that passed away there. That was a pretty monumental part of the Civil War. She worked directly with Abraham Lincoln as a spy. She would be a nurse. She had nursing skills, so it wasn't like far-fetched for her to just start working at a Confederate. Is everybody still there? Hello.